Welcome to Meaningful Activities to Generate Interesting Classrooms, Section 5, Game-Based Learning, Introduction, Conference Call. In this section, we will examine game-based learning in the classroom. We will discuss competition, strategy, and criteria for designing and evaluating game-based learning experiences. Please locate page 169, Section 5, Game-Based Learning, and note the quotations on this page. Children learn as they play. Most importantly, in play, children learn how to learn. Oh, the places you'll go. There is fun to be done. There are points to be scored. There are games to be won. As these quotations indicate, play, fun, and game-based learning can be engaging and effective in practicing and reviewing content. In this section, we will experience the various aspects of game-based learning in the classroom. Please locate page 170, Section Overview and Section Objectives, and page 171, Section Map. Please locate page 172, Research Excerpts. Read the research excerpts from the experts and highlight points that are most relevant to you. What research excerpts were most relevant to you? Remember, learning is not a spectator sport. Students prefer to be active rather than passive learners. Game-based learning can be engaging and motivating for students while still providing focus on content. Let's continue our discussion of game-based learning and the various skills it develops. There are several components of game-based learning that must be considered to ensure that the games are successful and meaningful. Let's examine the components of game-based learning more closely. Please locate page 173, Game-Based Learning. The topics we are going to discuss for game-based learning are game-based learning on page 173, designing and evaluating game-based learning on page 174, game-based learning rubric on page 175, competition in the classroom on page 176, strategy and metacognition on page 176. Please go to Canvas, Modules, Section 5, Game-Based Learning to find your group members. Use the editable Google Doc assigned to your group to discuss each topic. Share the information with the members of your group. As members share, highlight the relevant points they are emphasizing and discuss your thoughts and insights. What were your thoughts regarding game-based learning on page 173? Please take a moment to review this slide. What were your thoughts regarding designing and evaluating game-based learning on page 174? Please take a moment to review this slide. What were your thoughts regarding the game-based learning rubric on page 175? Please take a moment to review this slide. Please take a moment to review this slide. What were your thoughts regarding competition in the classroom on page 176? Please take a moment to review this slide. In a game or race, there are winners and losers, as it is in the real world. While we don't believe in that everyone gets a trophy, regardless of performance concept, there is a way to keep the focus on the important aspects of game-based learning. We want to celebrate our wins and be challenged to improve our losses. However, we want our students to focus on other game benefits, what they have learned, the teamwork, and the fun they had, rather than a sole focus on whether their team won or lost the game. I'm going to teach you a cheer we're going to do after we play each of our games that supports this mindset. I will say the teacher part and you will all say the class part. The teacher says, "Who won?" The class says, "We won." The teacher says, "Why?" Then hold up one finger and point to the class to repeat, "Because we learned so much." I will say the teacher part and you will all say the class part. The teacher says, "Who won?" The class says, "We won." The teacher says, "Why?" Then hold up two fingers and point to the class to repeat, "Because we all had fun." I will say the teacher part and you will all say the class part. The teacher says, "Who won?" The class says, "We won." The teacher says, "Why?" Then we'll hold up three fingers and point to the class and repeat, "Because we worked as a team." What were your thoughts regarding strategy and metacognition on page 176? Strategy of attitude. You will see this strategy used in team sports when a team will either try to shoot as many goals or score as many points as possible, offense, or work defensively to prevent the other team from scoring. This depends sometimes on whether their team is stronger offensively or defensively. Strategy of anticipation. This is a strategy used in chess where players try to anticipate what plays their opponent will make based on the plays they might take. Strategy of position. You will see this strategy used in races, running, swimming, or the Kentucky Derby, where one player might decide to adopt the position of coming from behind. They run a slow and steady race, making a final surprise sprint at the end. Another player might choose the in the lead position and decide to break out quickly right from the start. They assume the position of in the lead to make others feel like they are behind and defeated. Strategy of probability. You will see this strategy used in card games. Players evaluate the odds of certain cards being drawn based on the risk of playing certain cards. Remember, as this discussion emphasizes, there is a lot to consider when utilizing games in the classroom. We want to make sure that games serve a content-oriented educational purpose and are not just fluff. Remember that game-based learning also develops skills students need, such as strategy, teamwork, decision-making, and navigating competition. The game-based learning rubric is a useful tool for ensuring that all aspects of the game have been considered and that the level of engagement and content focus are maintained. Next, you will have an opportunity to participate in a game-based learning experience that focuses on place value. For this activity, we will form teams. Please go to Canvas, Module Section 5, Place Value Game for your small group members and your editable Google Doc. The place value game requires students to make strategic decisions about where to place numbers in a sequence. For this activity, the goal is for your team to get the highest or lowest 9-place number. Determine a player order for the members of your team. One team member from each team selects a number. The cards are numbered from 0 to 9. That player must decide where to place the number. Name the place value slot, the ones, the tens, the hundreds, the thousands, and write the number in the place value slot named. A 0 cannot be placed in the first place value slot on the left when striving for the lowest number, unless it is the last number picked by your team. Continue selecting a number until all place value slots are filled in. You may use the same number more than once. Do not select any numbers just yet. Please be sure to stay on your specific page of the Google Doc. Do not peek at other teams. Please locate page 178, Strategy Discussion. Before we begin the game, discuss your team's strategy by reviewing the questions listed here to ensure that your team has a cohesive strategy. Remember, do not select any numbers just yet. And be sure to stay on your specific page of the Google Doc. Do not peek at other teams. Before we begin the game, remember the importance of sportsmanship and support of teammates as the game progresses. Please be sure to stay on your specific page of the Google Doc. Do not peek at other teams. The first player from each team should select a number 0 through 9. You have 15 seconds to determine where you want to place the number, identify the place value slot, the ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, etc., and write the number in the corresponding place value slot. The second player from each team should select a number 0 through 9. Continue through each team member until all 9 members have been filled for each team. If your team had the highest number, you are one of the winners. If your team had the lowest number, you are one of the winners. I will say the teacher part and you will say the class part. The teacher says, "Who won?" The class says, "We won." The teacher says, "Why?" Then you would hold up one finger and point to the class to repeat, "Because we learned so much." Then we could repeat this a second time, and we'd hold up 2 fingers and say, "Because we all had fun." Then, if we did it a third time, we could say, "Because we worked as a team." On page 178, Strategy Discussion, did you stick to the strategy you and your team initially discussed, or did you change directions during the game? On page 178, Classroom Connections, what other topics in your curriculum would be a good fit for an ordering or sequencing game such as this one? Could the cards be the names of the presidents of the United States that students would have to place in order? Do your students struggle with positive and negative numbers on a number line? Could this game make practicing the concept more fun and memorable? Could you ask students to sequence events in a story or in a historical event? Please locate Appendix page 29, Game-Based Learning Activity, Alternative Place Value Game. This is an alternative place value game you can use in your classroom. Please take a moment to review the activity assets on page 178 and debrief this activity. Please take a moment to review this slide. Please read page 175, Game-Based Learning Rubric, and take note of whether you believe this game meets the criteria on this rubric. Now that you have reviewed the rubric, are there areas in need of improvement? How did the place value game rate on this rubric? What suggestions do you have for improvement? Could you differentiate the difficulty of the place value board by adding decimals or positive and negative numbers for certain teams? Is there another way we could have presented the game using technology? Did you have to wait your turn and didn't have much influence on where the numbers were placed? Remember, this game also has multiple pathways for learning. It has a hands-on component as you select a number and write the number in a slot. There is not only an opportunity for strategy in this game, but it requires that you sometimes change your strategy depending on the number you select and the team member's choice that comes before you. This activity is a good example of how game-based learning can help students understand a concept more clearly because students have to work with the information in order to make good decisions. Our next game is based on baseball. As we play this game, I want you to focus on the level of student engagement. Please locate page 179, Game-Based Learning Activity, Baseball Hit Baseball. Please go to Canvas Module Section 5, Base Hit Baseball to find the activity directions and group members. Although our game will be based on baseball, in the classroom you can align the game to the season and the sport being played. This activity involves moving players around the bases. However, the players can instead advance yards on a football field for correct answers or shoot baskets or goals to earn points. These games are best played with answers that are right or wrong. First, let's form teams. You can find your teams in Canvas Module Section 5, Base Hit Baseball. Your first task is to name your team and establish a player at bat order. Notice that there are several player at bat cards to represent the players for each team who will run bases. We also have hit cards, single, double, triple, and home run, from which you will pick if you answer the question correctly. Please locate page 180, Question Answer Scoring. Please take out a piece of paper and number from 1 to 22. I will ask a question and every player on every team writes down an answer on a piece of paper. Answers should be kept secret and no discussion is allowed. Once you have time to write your answers, the first player at bat on each team will display his or her answer on the paper. All teams play at the same time. If any of the players at bat have the correct answer, that player at bat will pick a hit card. The player at bat advances his or her player at bat card to the correct position, single, double, triple, or home run, posting the player at bat name on that team's scoreboard. If this advancement drives in a home run, or if a home run card is picked, then a run is marked on that team's scoreboard. If the answer is incorrect, an out is marked on that team's scoreboard. Your instructor will randomly ask one player from each team's dugout to show the answer written on the piece of paper. It is important that you select a different dugout player each time. If the dugout player has a correct answer, one player of your choice on base gets a stolen base. You are allowed to advance players because of a stolen base, and you can also steal home. If no players are on base when the dugout player answers correctly, then the team gets a walk to first base and then the out erased. We will play until each person has an opportunity to be player at bat. Before we begin, let's sing a stirring round of Take Me Out to the Ball Game. I am going to read the first question, and everyone will write the answer on a piece of paper. Number 1. What does the chemical formula CO2 represent? 2. What is the capital of the state in which we are holding class? 3. What was the name of the hurricane that destroyed New Orleans in 2005? 4. Who was the first man to walk on the moon? 5. What was Shakespeare's first name? 6. Write the Pythagorean theorem formula for a right triangle. 7. What is the first planet in our solar system? 8. Name one of the 3 ships Columbus sailed to the Americas in 1492. 9. How many yards does a team have to advance the football in order to get a first down? 10. Who is next in line to the throne of the United Kingdom after Queen Elizabeth II and her son Charles, Prince of Wales? 11. Name the European country that is shaped like a boot. 12. Atticus Finch and Scout were characters in what novel? 13. If you have a dozen eggs and you use 6 eggs for breakfast and 2 eggs for baking a cake, how many eggs do you have left? 14. What was the name of Dorothy's aunt in The Wizard of Oz? 15. Whose signature was the largest on the Declaration of Independence? 16. What does the R in SCORE stand for? 17. What type of review did this course encourage as powerful and effective? 18. What do students do in a Scoot activity? 19. Name one of the 6 major skills of life categories. 20. Name one of the questions for life thinking skills on the second row of the graphic. 21. When positioning activities, name one of the position options. 22. When providing multiple pathways to learning, name one of the 3 multiple means. The team with the most runs is the winner. I will say the teacher part and you will say the class part. The teacher says, "Who won?" The class says, "We won." The teacher says, "Why?" Then you hold up one finger because we learned so much. And if we repeated this chant a second time, we would hold up 2 fingers and point to the class and say, because we all had fun. If we were to do the chant a third time, we would then hold up 3 fingers and say, because we worked as a team. Please locate Appendix page 30, Game-Based Learning Activity, Goal Shot Hoop Toss. Here you will find 2 sports-related games that use a basketball hoop toss or a hockey-soccer goal shot. You can use whatever sport is in season at the time. Please locate page 181, Classroom Connections. What sport or event could you use as a content-related game of this kind? Could you use NASCAR and players could advance lengths around the track and count laps? Could you use the ships of different explorers and ask questions about explorers as they sail across the ocean? Could you use rockets and ask questions about astronomy? Please take a moment to review the activity assets on page 181 to debrief this activity. Remember, as with all games, it is important that you build in a way for all students to answer the question, rather than one person at a time, so that the level of student engagement is appropriate. This game did not involve much strategy and was more knowledge-based and luck of the draw. Games such as this one can be a nice change of pace from the usual worksheet and repetitive practice. Games are also a good way to review content because the emotion of the game makes information stick. In our next game-based learning activity, we add the element of speed and time and explore content-oriented races. Please locate page 182, Content-Oriented Races, and highlight important points on this page as I explain this information. A race is a type of game that adds speed as a factor. If you want to add more excitement to a game, you can add the concept of time and speed. When the word race is used, most educators will equate that with a lot of movement and noise. While there are some races for the classroom that involve movement, the race can be time-oriented and not necessarily movement-oriented. However, it is important to remember that some students flourish in competitive situations, while others experience anxiety and a lack of self-efficacy, and still others need more think time and don't perform well under pressure. Remember that there is significant research that indicates fast does not equal smart. In other words, a person who takes longer to come up with an answer can be just as intelligent as a person who arrives at the answer quickly. In most races or timed competitions, it is important to foster team spirit and a support system or scaffolding for struggling students. How do you perform in situations in which you are timed or in which speed is involved? Do you perform well under pressure, especially if you are timed? Do you tend to forget everything you know? If you are a coach, do you tend to thrive when competition is involved? Does it make you put forth more effort? Do you find it depends on whether or not you know what you are doing when being timed? In real-life situations, there are deadlines to meet and speed can become a factor. So an occasional race or timed activity can develop the skills and strategies students need to work under intense conditions. Our next activity, the Flyswatter race, gives you a chance to experience a game that is content-oriented and timed. Since it uses fly swatters, if you do this in the classroom, you must set guidelines about the use of fly swatters, that they are not to be used to hit anyone other than the fly. Races can also be challenging for some team members who slow the race down and could influence the success of the team. So it is important to teach students to be encouragers and coaches, not criticizers. Coaching and strategy time can be built into the race. Since we are learning remotely, we are unable to play the Flyswatter game the way we typically would. We have provided the face-to-face version of the directions in case you would like to play this activity with your classes. Please go to Canvas, Module Section 5, Flyswatter Race. Please locate page 183, Game-Based Learning Activity, Flyswatter Race. We are going to divide you into teams. Your instructor will assign a letter to each team, A, B, C, D, E, F. Establish an order of rotation for your team and use the editable Google Doc for your team. Each team should have a fly swatter and a plastic fly, which you would place in the center of your table. Again, if we were doing this face-to-face. Many times, teachers will have students complete a worksheet to practice or review content learned. The fly swatter race is a way you can turn the usual worksheet of problems or questions into a fun and engaging race. In a moment, you are going to answer problems with several calculations or questions with multiple answers. Let's review how the race will be conducted by doing a practice round. In each group's editable Google Doc, the goal for the activity is listed at the top, which is multiplying by 3 over 300. In other words, you will start with 3 times 3, and then each time you will multiply the answer by 3. Your instructor is going to get you started. Please do not work ahead until your instructor tells you to do so. The first person starts the calculation by writing the problem 3 times 3 and calculates the answer equals 9. Do that now. Person 2 should be ready. Person 2 continues and writes 9 times 3 and calculates the answer. Do that now. Person 3 should be ready. Person 3 continues and writes 27 times 3 and calculates the answer. When it is your turn, if the answer is wrong, use your turn to rewrite the problem and the correct answer, and then continue. Keep working in your group's editable Google Doc until you reach an answer that is over 300. The person who reaches an answer over 300 swats the fly and says, "Swat the fly." The first team finished earns the most points, and each successive team that finishes earns 1 point less. You can now continue the race with person 4. Ready, set, begin. Swat the fly when you reach a number over 300. As teams finish, they will be listed in order according to their team letter. Let's check your final answer in the order your team finished. The correct answer should be 729. Let's do another round with a different goal. Your goal is name 10 of the original 13 colonies. Ready, set, begin. Check your answers and let your instructor know if your team was able to list 10 of the original 13 colonies. Here are other options you could try for Flyswatter races. Spelling. You could encourage students to spell sensational. Geography. Name the 7 continents. Science. Name the planets in order. Math. Multiply by 5 over 30,000. Spelling. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Social studies. Name 5 of the 8 states that begin with the letter M. Math. Multiply by 7 over 100,000. I will say the teacher part and you will all say the class part. The teacher says, "Who won?" The class says, "We won." The teacher says, "Why?" Then you're holding up 2 fingers this time and you are saying, "Because we all had fun." If you really wanted to be adventurous and do it a 3rd time, then you would say, "Because we worked as a team." Please locate Appendix page 31, Game-Based Learning Activity, Row Races. Here you will find a race in which students compete in rows as they answer questions. Also, notice the other games available for your use in the appendix on pages 32 through 35. Please locate page 184, Classroom Connections. What topics in your curriculum would be a good fit for a race? Do you have a game your students play outside in which they are some prey and some are predators? Are there certain safe spots on the ground and the race is to see who survives, the predator or the prey? Do you have a dictionary row race? Do you post 2 guide words on the board and then show a word, and students have to pass the correct card up the row that indicates if the word is before, during, or after the guide words. Do you make a fish pond or fish shapes with a question on the back of each one? Do students have to catch a fish, take it back to the group, answer the question, return the fish, and catch a different one? Is it a race to see who answers all of the questions correctly in the least amount of time? What are the advantages and challenges of the Flyswatter race? Is it more fun to do a worksheet as a race with a team or to work on your own and do a worksheet? Would your students love using the Flyswatter and swatting the fly? Would you have to make some strict guidelines as to how the Flyswatters are to be used? Is it important to emphasize that students should encourage teammates and not criticize those who are struggling? Please take a moment to review the activity assets on page 184 to debrief this activity. Remember, as with all games and races, we want to make sure that there is a content connection to what students are doing. It is essential that accurate answers are just as important as speed. As in real life, being the first doesn't necessarily mean you'll be successful. Races and timed activities make the time go faster, and there can be personal satisfaction in improving one's performance each time. Races with the appropriate guidelines can add an element of movement to content-oriented practice and review. The movement must have purpose and be safe. Throughout this section, we have discussed game-based learning in the classroom. We will now give you the opportunity to record the strategies and activities you would like to implement in your classroom. Please locate page 185, Classroom Connections, and remove one of the Classroom Connections cards from your course folder. Review the various activities and strategies we have experienced in Section 5, Game-Based Learning, including Appendix pages 32 through 35. Turn back to the various pages to find the activities and strategies if you need to refresh your memory. Magic Commercial and Magic Trick are part of the course closing, so you have not experienced them yet, but they are listed here as ideas. Are there any strategies that are unclear? Record your favorite ideas on one of the Classroom Connections cards that you intend to use in your classroom. Also, record the page number of the activity so you can find it later and any other details or ideas for using it in the box provided. What favorite strategies and activities did you record? Remember, effective game-based learning can be engaging and motivating to learners. Keep your classroom connections in your course folder where you can find it easily. When the course is finished, you will have a list of favorite strategies and activities for implementation in one handy location. Next, you will take a moment to internalize what you have learned in this section and determine what is meaningful to you as an educator. One way to make students have connections to content following an activity is to have your students do reflections like this one. Please turn your attention to the bottom of page 185, Reflection Connection. Page back through Section 5, Game-Based Learning, and reflect on what you have learned in this section. One of the assessments you are required to complete for this course, Assessment 3, involves these reflections, so you will want to make sure your responses are thorough. Remember, giving the brain time to slow down, reflect, and internalize content learned allows for more meaningful retention of information. Reflection time is an essential part of internalizing content and aids future recall and use. The rest of this session will be for you to work independently through the material. There will now be narrated PowerPoints on Canvas, Module Section 5, to walk you through the rest of today's activities. Please be sure to post the activities in the discussion area or submitted assignment area before our next class. Remember, even though these activities are not graded, they must be completed to report your successful completion to your university partner. Immediately after the conference call, you will go to Canvas Module Section 5, Game-Based Learning, to conduct your game-based learning experiences. I hope you enjoy this opportunity. Finally, we will engage in culminating activities to solidify your magic experience over the last few weeks. Let the good times begin. If you have questions while you work, please call or email your instructor. This concludes Section 5 Introduction Conference Call. Please continue to Module Section 5 Game-Based Learning, conduct game-based learning experiences.